Hello and welcome. This is a presentation by the League of Women Voters of North Orange County explaining the 11 measures on the November 2018 general election California ballot. We will fairly and accurately discuss both the pros and the cons of each of the 11 measures. The League of Women Voters was formed in 1920 when women were finally allowed to vote. The League's mission is to encourage informed and active participation of all citizens in all levels of government through education and advocacy. This activity today is through our education arm, though the League does take positions on some of the measures that are on this ballot. We will not be discussing those today because this is purely a voter education exercise. What are the propositions? Propositions are proposed laws. They can make new laws, change existing laws, and sometimes they change California's Constitution. They can be placed on the ballot by people who collect enough voter signatures or by state lawmakers, the California legislature. A proposition passes and becomes law if it receives more than 50% yes votes, or 50% plus 1. So how should you decide? Remember that you get a simple yes or a simple no. So if it is a complex issue, you need to remember that your yes is a yes to all the facets of the proposition before you. You don't get a yes maybe or a no but. A yes means yes to everything on that proposition. A no simply means that you will leave things the way they are today. Some propositions change our Constitution? Does this proposition belong in the Constitution? Our Constitution today is over 500 pages long. Would a statute accomplish the same thing? If it is made a change to the Constitution, it has to go back to a vote of the people for any changes. Who are the sponsors and the opponents of the measure? You will find through our presentation today that we have listed, other than the people that you will see in your voter guide, we have listed who has actually paid for the campaigns on the propositions. The figures that are given are the figures as of late September. Don't pay attention too much to the exact numbers. Those have been rounded, and as I say, by the time you read this presentation, they may be a little bit out of date. The thing to pay attention to is who is contributing and whether or not there's a lopsided difference in whether one side is giving over the other. That doesn't necessarily mean anything of huge importance other than that you will receive a lot more information from a side that has more money than you will from a side that has less. It may mean that there's greater support, or it may just mean that one side is richer than the other. If the proposition creates a new program, how is it being paid for? Does the proposition give a revenue stream in the proposition itself so that it self-funds, or does it ask the legislature to carve out part of our existing state budget to pay for it? Remember that a huge percentage of our state budget is already out of the state legislature's hands because we have earmarked it for one program or another. Finally, simply look at the merits of the proposition. Do you think it's a good idea? Is it something that will end up in the court system if it passes? Will it actually, as it is written, accomplish its stated goals? And lastly, as a general rule to all voters, realize when you look at your voter guide that information that is listed as coming from the legislative analyst, it will be the top information on the proposition. That information is fact. You can trust it. You can believe it. Everything else, and it actually says it in very, very tiny print on the bottom of each page, is opinion. It is not in any way checked for truth. It may or may not be true. It is purely someone's opinion. So all those arguments in favor, arguments against, those are not checked for accuracy. They are purely opinion. And by the way, just as an aside, though we won't be talking about any candidates today, those candidates that have statements in the back of your voter guide have paid to put them there. That doesn't mean that they're not factual. It also doesn't mean that they are. But it does mean that just because a candidate doesn't have a statement in the voter guide, that they are either not running or don't care. It may simply mean that they couldn't afford to put it there, because those are very, very expensive. In many cases, they are many thousands of dollars. So let's now look at the 11 propositions that are before us today.